Chapter 2: The Chemical Level of Organization. The student learning objectives in this chapter is for us to understand the basic structure of atoms and how they combine to form molecules and compounds. We'll study the basic chemical reactions that are very important to anatomy and physiology. We'll study the role of enzymes in metabolism, the four main organic macromolecules. We'll study the importance, structure, and properties of water, pH, and buffering systems. We'll study the structure and function of carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids, and ATP. If you remember the hierarchy of life, it starts with the atom in the bottommost layer. The atom is the smallest unit of matter that has the properties of that element. And atomic theory is a scientific theory that tells us that all matter is made up of atoms. And atoms, in turn, is made up of subatomic particles, the main particles being the protons with a positive charge and neutrons with no charge found in the nucleus of the atom, and the electrons zooming around it in fixed orbits, and they have a negative charge. Usually these electrons are found it's referred to as a electron cloud. The number of protons that are found in an atom is commonly referred to as the atomic number. The mass of both the protons and neutrons in the nucleus is referred to as mass number. Isotopes are elements with the same number of protons but different number of neutrons. For example, carbon 12 has 6 protons and 6 neutrons, whereas carbon 13 has 6 protons and 7 neutrons. So they are called isotopes. So an element is a pure substance that has only one type of atom in it. So all uh, the nuclei will have the same number of protons. So they are called as elements. So the periodic table is a representation of all the elements that we have discovered so far. 92 of them are naturally occurring, and some, as shown in yellow here in the table, are artificial elements. So they are arranged in increasing number of protons, and it's organized in rows called periods and columns. So, and they're also grouped by property. So everything that is seen in white here are solids, the blue are the liquids, and the pink are the gases. So a periodic table is a tabular display of all the chemical elements. They are arranged by the atomic number, electron configuration, and chemical properties. So, among all these elements, the elements that are most predominantly found in the human body are oxygen, 65%, 18% carbon, 10% hydrogen, 3% nitrogen. So, CHON are the top elements that are found in the body, followed by calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, sodium, chlorine, and magnesium. And there's a whole bunch of elements that we need in very small quantities. They are called trace elements like boron, chromium, iron. So, all these elements are vital for life. Here's an example of the significance of these elements. Uh, if you take calcium, it is found in your bones and teeth. It is very important for membrane function, transmission of action potentials or nerve impulses, important for muscle contraction and blood clotting. So, all these elements that we studied are vital for survival. And we'll take one more. Here's iron. It's a trace element, but iron is very important in the structure of hemoglobin, which is the oxygen transport that is found in your red blood cells. So, for carrying oxygen to every cell in your body that is vital for cellular respiration, we need iron. Iodine, very important for your thyroid hormones. And here's a few examples of common deficiencies. This shows iron deficiency that can cause goiter. That's why most of the salt that we buy in the supermarket is iodinized. And here's a sad picture of children with vitamin D deficiency because it interferes with the uptake of calcium, important for bones. So this causes these typical bow legs called rickets. So that's why, like when we buy milk, it's fortified with vitamin D. Scurvy is a gum disorder because of caused because of deficiency of vitamin C. Iron deficiency causes anemia, and chronic fatigue is one of the symptoms. So let's look into the structure of atoms here. So we know the protons and neutrons are found in the nucleus, and the electrons are found in specific shells orbiting the nucleus. They are like just zipping in high speed. The electrons that are closer, the speed is less compared to the electrons that are further away from the nucleus. And because protons have a positive charge, they have a pull on the electrons, thereby keeping the electrons in its orbit. So, lithium atomic number is 3. So, it has 3 protons and 3 electrons. Coming to the shells where the electrons are found, the first shell can hold a maximum of 2 electrons. The second shell, 8 electrons. Third shell, 18 electrons. And the fourth shell, 32 electrons, and so forth. The electrons that are found in the outermost shell, they are called valence electrons, and they determine the reactivity of the atom. So, by sharing the electrons that are found in the outermost shell, either by they will gain an electron or lose an electron, all the atoms are always striving to be stable. Only when there's 2, 8, 18, 32 in the fixed orbits here, only when there's 2 in the first orbit, 8 in the second orbit, is the atom stable. So when it's unstable, it is always trying to either donate an atom or gain an electron in order to reach stability. When 2 or more atoms of the same element come together by bonding, they are called molecules. When 2 or more atoms of different elements come together, they are called compounds. So, this unsatisfied outer valence electrons, they decide chemical bonds in biology and in chemistry in general. So in biology there are 3 main bonds that we should be aware of. Ionic bonds, which is the attraction between positive and negative ions. So it's the attraction between cations, which are positively charged, and anions, which are negatively charged. Covalent bonds happen because of sharing of electrons, and hydrogen bonds are partial hydrostatic attractions. We'll see each one of them. Ionic bond is a type of chemical bond that involves electrostatic attraction between oppositely charged atoms. So here, so ions, when we say ion, it is an atom with a charge. If you take the sodium atom, the first shell has 2 electrons, so it is stable and satisfied. The second one has 8, whereas the third one has just 1. So, in order for the third shell to be stable, it needs 7 more electrons. So, in order to achieve stability, it will donate an electron, thereby, the sodium atom will become positive. On the other hand, chlorine on the third shell, it has 7 electrons and it's looking for 1 more electron. So it's going to accept this electron and in turn it will become negative. So this bond that forms between a positive ion and a negative ion is called as a ionic bond. A very good example is sodium chloride, which is table salt. Covalent. So the valency is shared. So this involves sharing of electrons. So in order to achieve stability, electrons are shared between 2 elements. When they share one pair of electron, it is called as a single bond. If they share 2, it is a double bond, and it can also be a triple bond. So the electron is donated by each pair of atoms, and this leads to a single covalent bond or a double covalent bond. It's very strong bond. If there is equal sharing, it is called non-polar covalent bond. If it is unequal sharing, it is called polar covalent bond. Hydrogen bond is a very weak bond that's formed between 2 molecules, and it results from an electrostatic attraction between a proton in one molecule and a electronegative atom in the other molecule. So for example, here is a hydrogen atom, 2 hydrogen atoms, and here is an oxygen atom. So the oxygen atom, in order to be stable, is looking for 2 more electrons, and these 2 more electrons are shared by the hydrogen atom. So here we see a bonding between hydrogen atom and an oxygen atom, 2 different atoms, but hydrogen is involved. When oxygen is very electronegative, meaning when it is sharing these electrons, it has a pull on the electrons towards it. And because of that, oxygen has a partial negative charge on one side here, whereas the hydrogen has a partial positive charge. So this symbol means partial, this 8 kind of a symbol. So water is important for life. There is no life without water. Life as we know it, evolution, everything happened in a medium of water. So water is a polar molecule. It's like a little magnet. Has a partial negative charge where the oxygen is found and a partial positive charge. And it's like a little magnet. And it's because of this uh, nature of water that it lends itself to the various important properties of water that sustains life. Water is highly soluble. See, like human beings, like our body, we are 2/3 of our body is water. In other words, we are like a walking wetland. All the chemical reactions are happening in a water based aqueous medium. So the solubility of water is very high. That means it is able to dissolve a range of solutes in it. Reactivity. The basic chemical reactions that happen in a body is happening in a medium of water. It has high heat capacity. That means it has a high ability to absorb heat, retain heat. That is important for homeostasis of temperature in our body. Lubrication, or the atmosphere, the environment inside our body is very wet. Water is an excellent lubricant of all our uh, the various organs in our body. It it insulates and protects and lubricates all the joints in our body. Other properties like high heat of evaporation, cohesion, adhesion, they are all important for life to be sustained. We've heard of these two words that refer to water. Hydrophilic substances are water loving, hydrophobic are water hating. And this picture is like showing the main functions of water in our body, how water is important for temperature homeostasis, regulates body temperature. It's a lubricant, is keeping all our internal organs moist. It is the medium in which all the nutrients are carried. All the chemical reactions in our body is happening in an aqueous environment. The next property that we have to review is the hydrogen ion concentration, or pH, the potential of hydrogen, power of hydrogen. So the pH is a scale that runs from 0 to 14, and then it is indicating the acidity or the basic nature of an aqueous solution. So water is H2O. It can split into hydrogen and oxygen. If the hydrogen and oxygen hydroxyl concentrations are the same, it is called pH 7 or neutral. Good example being the water that we drink. And our blood is slightly alkaline, which is pH 7.4. Anything above 7, the hydroxyl ion concentration is high. Seawater, baking soda, ammonia, cleaning fluids. If it is less than 7, the hydrogen ion concentration is high. And these are the acidic things that we like coffee, tea, uh, juices like lime juice or orange juice. So they all acidic. The pH balance is very important for life because it controls the absorption of nutrients, the availability of nutrients. It has it can it is important for metabolism, for enzyme activity, hormone function. So, in order to maintain a blood pH of 7.3 to 7.4, which is normal, there's also a built in buffering system in our blood. So, buffers are chemicals that resist change in pH. So, an understanding of pH is important for physiology. Chemical reactions. So, you probably studied in basic chemistry. When we write a chemical equation, everything that's written on the left side is the reactant. So these reactants will come together. They'll either form bonds or break bonds in order to make the product. There are two main chemical reactions that happen in the body. Like when you say metabolism, there are two main things. Anabolism is when small molecules are used in the presence of energy to form larger molecules. That means you're building up large molecules that the body needs. It's called anabolism. Catabolism refers to breaking down. A large molecule is broken down into smaller molecules, thereby releasing energy. So, they are the two very broad classes of chemical reactions that happen in the body. The next facet of chemical reaction is we need to understand what dehydration reaction and hydrolysis is. When, when we want to make a large molecule, monomers will come together with the loss of a water molecule and they'll form a covalent bond. So this loss of water is called dehydration or condensation reaction. When we want to break a large molecule into smaller molecules, we need to add water to the system. It's called hydrolysis. So by adding water to the system, a large molecule is broken down to monomer. Monomer means one molecule. Polymer means more than one molecule. So here's an example of a dehydration reaction. So here we have glucose and fructose. They come together with the loss of a water molecule here. They form a covalent bond to form sucrose. The opposite would be hydrolysis reaction, where the sucrose molecule will be hydrolyzed to form glucose and fructose. In order for optimal health and survival, our body requires nutrients, and the main source of nutrients in our body is from food. Organic means carbon and hydrogen containing, inorganic means not containing. Metabolites refer to the molecules that are made in the body that are broken down, and molecules are broken down in the body to make the nutrients that our body requires. Inorganic molecules, they do not have carbon and hydrogen. These are some of the example of inorganic compounds vital for life: carbon dioxide that we exhale, oxygen, water, and there's a lot of acids and bases and salts. Organic compounds, here the molecules have carbon and hydrogen in them. There are four main macromolecules important for survival. They are carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. So this is a summary picture of the four big biomolecules that are found in our body that are rich in carbon and hydrogen. Carbohydrates, the monomer that make carbohydrates are called simple sugars or monosaccharides. The main function is energy in our cells, and they also provide structural material to make structures in the cell. And carbs, we can understand this in terms of food. You know, all the delicious breads and pastas and mashed potatoes and gravy, they are all carbohydrate. Examples are glucose, like sucrose will break down into glucose. Fructose, fruits are high in simple sugar called fructose, fruit. Lactose from milk. Proteins, second macromolecule, they're made up of amino acids. They have a whole range of function in our body. And milk, eggs, cheese, meat, they're all very high in protein. This is vital for life. Nucleic acids is deoxyribonucleic acid and ribonucleic acids, DNA and RNA. They are the genetic material in our body, and they will direct growth and development. Lipids is not a polymer. It is made up of two molecules called glycerol and fatty acids. They are high energy molecules and they are very good insulators. They are found in cell membranes. Examples would be fats, oils, and waxes. So we'll look at each one of them. So the chemical formula of carbohydrate is there's a clue in the word itself. There's carbon, and hydrate means water, H2O, and it is found in the ratio of 1 part carbon, 2 part hydrogen, and 1 part oxygen. Monosaccharide, saccharide means sugar, mono means 1, is a single sugar. And good examples of monosaccharides are glucose. So here is a chemical structure of glucose. So there's a carbon here and hydrogen, hydroxyl, fructose, galactose. So these are all monosaccharides. Disaccharides are 2 simple sugars coming together like sucrose. So they're bonded by a covalent bond. So sucrose is an example, lactose, maltose. If it is a long stretch of simple sugars that are attached by covalent bonds by condensation reaction, it is called as a polysaccharide. So we have monosaccharide, disaccharide, and polysaccharide. They provide energy. They have structural functions. So here is a long chain of carbohydrate or polysaccharide. So like if you take potato starch, this is how it will look like. So it has like a small branching pattern. However, sugar is stored in the human body, especially in our muscles and liver, as a glycogen. So it's a highly branched glucose molecule. So it's like thousands of and hundreds of um, glucose molecules, glycogen. That is the storage form of sugar in our body. Lipid is not a polymer of the same molecule. It is made up of 2 molecules, glycerol. So this structure is called glycerol, and 2 long fatty acid chains. So that's why it's called triglyceride. So they also come together with a loss of water to form a covalent bond. And this CH2 that we see here, a long chain of CH2s, they show that it is a very high energy molecule. Lipids are insoluble in water. It comprises of fats, waxes, oils. There are many hormones have a lipid base to it, and also membrane components. It is a high energy molecule. So the fats can either be saturated with hydrogen molecules. So when it's saturated, the molecule has a flat appearance. They don't stack up on top of it. They stack up on each other and they are solid at room temperature. For example, butter is a saturated fat. Unsaturated fat, on the other hand, will have double bonds in the triglyceride chain, and because of that, there are these a bent or a nick in the chain, and they don't stack up on top of each other, and they are liquid at room temperature. This type of a fat is better in the diet. There's evidence that shows that saturated fat, too much of it, can cause plaques in the arteries and lead to cardiovascular disease. One important type of lipid is a phospholipid, where one of the triglyceride chain is replaced by a phosphate group. So because of that, it is not hydrophobic. One part of the molecule is hydrophilic, where there's phosphate group in it, and the hydrophobic part is where the CH2 tails are found. So now this unique structure is very important because it forms all the cell membranes, the phospholipid bilayer of cell membranes. Steroids are 4 rings of carbon and hydrogen. So it's a cyclic compound like this, and with functional groups. Steroids come under lipids too. Why should you know it? For example, cholesterol is the precursor molecule for making important hormones like testosterone or estrogen. Proteins are the most abundant macromolecule that's found in our body. They contain carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. They are very rich in nitrogen. They have a whole range of function in our body. Oxygen transport. So here they are talking about hemoglobin. So hemoglobin is the protein that carries oxygen in the blood. They are enzymes. All the enzymes in our body is proteins. They play a huge defense role in our body because all the antibodies in our body are proteins. All the hormones in our body are proteins. Hormones are regulatory molecules, very important for growth and development. Uh, Insulin is a hormone that regulates blood sugar levels. The receptors that are found on our cell membrane are all proteins. So here is an action potential molecule. So here the receptor that is going to accept and accept the neurotransmitters are proteins. Proteins are found in your muscles. So for your contraction of your muscles, the actin and myosin, they are proteins. Their proteins are also structural in function. For example, keratin in your hair and nails is proteins, collagen, and in your skin. So the function of proteins in our body are just endless. There's so many functions, contractile proteins, signaling proteins. So that's why proteins are very important in your diet because it's directly connected to your health. Protein structure, the proteins are made up of monomers called amino acids. There are 20 different type of amino acids. If you study the basic structure of an amino acid, it will have a central carbon that is attached to a hydrogen, a carboxyl group, a amino group, and a side group or R group. So there are 20 different types of R groups. And here the R groups are shown in yellow here. So if the R group is CH3 here and two molecules of amino, two of them are here, and then CH3 is alanine. So we have 20 different amino acids, glycine, alanine, valine, leucine. So they have a symbol letter, and that would be the full form. Some are polar in nature, some are non-polar, some are acidic, some are basic, and so forth. And by dehydration reaction, two amino acids can come together and with the loss of a water molecule form a covalent bond. Here the covalent bond is called as a peptide bond. And the long chain of amino acid is called as a polypeptide. So if you take one long protein, it will have a carboxyl end and an amino end. The structure of proteins are very important because they decide function. When we refer to the sequence of amino acids in the protein, it is called primary structure. When they form hydrogen bonds between them to either form a spiral or a sheet, it is called secondary structure. When it folds back on itself to form unique shapes, it's called tertiary structure. And when more than one polypeptide chain come together to form a protein, it is called as the quaternary structure. So all these four levels of protein organization is important for its function. When a protein is subjected to harsh environment, it will lose its structure and hence its function. And that is called protein denaturation. Like it might be a change in pH or very high or low temperatures, or it can be radiation or salinity. All of them can cause protein denaturation. One of the most important aspects of proteins is that they are in general, most enzymes in our body are all proteins. So here is a enzymatic reaction. In general, for any chemical reaction to happen, the reactants should need some energy. It's called activation energy in order to become the products. Enzymes work by reducing the activation energy in a reaction. So here is the enzyme. the protein. It has a special site called active site where the reactants will come sit. The reactants are called substrates. The enzyme is going to provide the right environment. It's either going to make bonds or break bonds. It's called transition state. It'll tug at it and pull at it, and thereby it'll release the product. So the enzyme is a protein catalyst and it is reused. It speeds up a chemical reaction. It is very important in the metabolism of our body because most of the chemical reactions in a cell happen because of enzymes, and they act by reducing the activation energy of the reaction. Here's nucleic acids, the last macromolecule. So this is the genetic material. This is the boss in the cell. They are going to monitor every chemical reaction that happens in a cell. So it was Watson and Crick that proposed the double helix structure of deoxyribonucleic acids. It is usually protected in the nucleus. The mitochondria also has a little bit of DNA. It stores and processes information. It is responsible for inheritance. They direct protein synthesis, enzyme production, and metabolism. In other words, everything that's happening in a cell is modulated and regulated and overseen and supervised by the DNA. So, Watson and Crick in 1953, they proposed the structure of DNA and they got a Nobel Prize for this. The monomers that make DNA are called nucleotides. Here's a nucleotide. So the nucleotide has three parts. It has a phosphate group, a sugar part, and a nitrogenous base, the nitrogenous base. So the nitrogenous base can either be a pyrimidine, which is cytosine, uracil, a thymine, and purine is either adenine or guanine. They are double ring structures. The sugar can either be a ribose sugar, like in DNA, RNA, or a deoxyribose, like in DNA. RNA is the intermediate molecule. Like if you remember the central dogma of biology where DNA becomes RNA, RNA acts as a template for protein synthesis. So RNA is the intermediate step for protein synthesis. So the difference between DNA and RNA is the sugar is a deoxy sugar, ribose sugar in DNA, whereas it's ribose in RNA. DNA is double-stranded, so it is a double helix. So the sides of the ladder is made up of sugar phosphate. The rungs of the ladder are the nitrogenous bases. Adenine goes with thymine and guanine goes with cytosine. That is the complementary base pairing. DNA is double-stranded helix, whereas RNA is single-stranded. And they have several differences in terms of function. So this is the fourth macromolecule, organic macromolecule found in our bodies. So DNA is the molecule of inheritance and the molecule that will regulate all the metabolism in a cell. One of the most important, this is also it's very similar to a nucleic acid, which is called ATP. This is the energy currency in a cell, adenosine triphosphate. So here we have adenine and a ribose sugar. Together it's called adenosine. And here there are three phosphates attached to it. So every time it loses a phosphate group, it will release some energy. So the triphosphate can lose one phosphate and become adenosine diphosphate, or it can lose two and become adenosine monophosphate. A common analogy is like a rechargeable battery. When we eat and we consume calories and energy, it will charge up the ATP molecule. And then the ATP molecule in turn will provide the energy that is required for all the energy requiring reactions that happen in our body. So adenosine triphosphate, in the presence of water, it will lose a phosphate group, forming ADP and energy. The breakage of one phosphate group provides energy for the physiological processes that happen in our body. So, for all the chemical reactions, most of the chemical reactions that happen in our body, like, and also for muscle contraction, for action potentials, that is nerve pulse propagation, and for metabolism and all the chemical reactions, we need ATP. If there is no ATP, there is no life. And ATP is produced by cellular respiration, by breaking down food in the presence of oxygen. So that's the last concept, and I hope that helped.